Hey people, welcome to the Run Testers and a first run look at the Adidas Terrex Agravic Flow 2, a shoe that Adidas says is a versatile trailer that offers super light cushioning for next level speed and good all conditions grip. It's aimed at people who mix their miles between some tarmac and some technical trail. So how does it hold up? Well, I put in 16 miles of the first half of a solo New Forest Ultra to find out. Some quick details then with the Agravic Flow 2 stack height comes in at 28 mils on the hill, 20 mils on the forefoot for an 8 mil drop. They weigh in at 316 grams or 11.12 ounces in my UK men's 8.5 test shoe. On price, the Agravic Flow 2 is $130 in the UK or $140 in the US, but you can now pick them up well under £100 and $100. So let's have a quick look at the shoe then, starting with the midsole, which features a medium stack of light strike cushioning, which is pretty firm. There's a rock plate in here for protection. Up top, the mesh uppers are made with a high performance yarn. There's quite a lot of structure there. It's quite kind of thick, and you've got a slightly kind of reinforced toe box. You've got a flat wrapping tongue here with a little bit of extra to protect against the kind of lace pinch. At the back, you've got really quite a lot of structure into the heel here. There is definitely some inserts in underneath that. There's quite a big kind of padded fat section at the top, and this rises up quite high. There's not a lot of movement in that heel, as you can see here, but more on that later. Then when you flip them over, there is a continental rubber outsole for traction over rough terrain in wet or dry. So quick word on fit then, there's just about a thumb's width towards the end of the toe box. You've got quite a structured toe box here, so there is some clearance across the top of the toes, but as you move back into the shoe, when you get into this section, again, across those toe knuckles, little toe knuckle to big toe knuckle, it gets quite tight in here. I've got fairly wide feet and I find that Adidas shoes can come up a bit narrow on this bit. So overall, it does feel a little bit cramped. It's got that kind of sort of locked in feel. I guess if you like it very roomy across this section, if you've got wide feet, you might struggle here. Then when you go further back up the shoe, actually I found it a little bit tricky to get the lace lockdown 100% dialed in on these shoes, and there was a little bit of looseness here across the top. It's not terrible slipping, but it just doesn't feel quite as snug and tight as some shoes can. So you've got tightness here, a little bit of looseness here. When you go back into the heel collars, they mainly hold really nicely, but what you do have is this high heel collar here, which I did find the lack of flexibility in that heel collar and how high it comes up there did actually sort of dig by the end of those sort of 16 miles or the 3 hours. Now, overall, would I go true to size in these shoes? I think actually if you like it a bit more roomy, you could probably go half a size up, although it might risk getting a bit long. But certainly in this section, I think you might benefit, unless you really like it, that sort of tight, snug fit, I think you might benefit from having more room, particularly if you're going to use these shoes for anything like an ultra where you want a bit of room for your feet to expand. So for this first run, I logged the first 16 miles of a 30-mile solo ultra around the trails of the New Forest here in the UK on a mix of groomed, compact gravel paths, grass, boggy mud, pony trails, and off-trail along the forest floor. I ran all of the miles between 8 and 9 minute miles, so nothing lightning fast overall, but I threw in some faster segments to test the top pace of the shoe as well. Now I'll start with the comfort on the foot. The fit, as I've mentioned, is quite narrow like some Adidas shoes can be, and I found it a shade restrictive overall. And if you like a roomy feel in your trail shoes, you'll need to consider sizing on these particularly carefully, particularly on the width. The heel is also very stiff, as I've mentioned, and that's a rubbing worry here. So the stepping comfort wasn't initially great on this shoe. From the moment I put them on, I felt like this shoe would need running in, not just because of the way the uppers feel, but the light strike midsole is very, very stiff and blocky. Even when you're walking around the house, you kind of feel it. It's like having, you know, something very firm underfoot. Now, I don't mind a firmer shoe, and that's not uncommon in some trail shoes, but there's a rigidity here that might be too much for some. Now, that comfort improved over the 2 to 3 hours that I ran in them, but they're nowhere near as disappearing or natural as something like the Adidas Terrex Agravic Speed Ultra, or shoes like the Hoka Speedgoat 5, or even the Innovate Trailfly, which I think in many ways offers a similarly direct ride as this shoe, but in a noticeably lighter package. Now the Flow 2 certainly aren't lightweight, they are heavy, though they run a little lighter than the scales suggest they might. Speaking of ride, despite the medium stack, the ride is very firm, very, very firm in fact. If you're a fan of softer ride trail shoes, these are likely to be too harsh, at least on anything but the softer ground. They were much happier and more natural when you hit the softer trails. But on the harder ground, you know, the tarmac and the compact stuff, there's little here to take the edge off the impact. That light strike foam that we've got here just feels a little dead. On the road or the harder compact trail, you really feel that ground impact coming up. On the soft ground, like forest floors and bits and pieces, that kind of feeling disappears, and that light strike midsole flows a lot better. Having said that, I managed 3 hours in the Flow 2, straight out the box, and I found I wanted to pick my feet faster as a result of that direct midsole. Again, that's not necessarily a bad thing all the time, but you can't really slouch and let the cushioning look after your feet and legs. This is a shoe that you need to use when you're on it. But I didn't find them particularly snappy either, and they wouldn't be my first choice for tackling any kind of ultra where you're looking at long stretches of firmer ground. I think shorter is probably the natural habitat for these shoes. By the time I reached 16 miles, I was quite pleased to be swapping them out for another shoe. Now, on the flip side, the platform is nice and stable. There's a reliability and a precision in each footstep that I think is really welcome. And I found these 4mm lugs on the bottom gripped really well across the terrain I covered as well. Nothing very steep and slippery, but some slicker sections on wet grass. Also, the flip side to that is that they do stick on the road more than you'd probably want. Well, first impressions then after 16 miles and around 3 hours in the Agravic Flow 2. I didn't massively dislike this shoe, but I didn't love it either. It's a robust, well-built shoe with all the signs of good durability. The grip is excellent. I like the ground feel for some bits. There's good connection underfoot, and I felt good control throughout my miles. But the light strike midsole is very firm. It probably caters best for shorter efforts, particularly if you prefer a more cushioned ride in your trail shoes. Things improve once you hit the softer ground, where it really feels more natural overall, but I'm not sure that everyone is going to want to lace this up for long runs. And when you look at other shoes with supercritical foams that are coming to the trails, they're now doing a good job of balancing control with protection and energy, even on the trails. These ones now, I think, just feel a little bit old school. Comfort could also be better. I wasn't instantly at home and had to work my way into the shoes. Again, shoes like the Speedcoat 5, the Merrell Agility Peak, and the Innovate Trail Fly all feel more just instantly comfortable on the foot. Another plus though here is that the shoes do feel built to last. Plus the price right now puts these into the potential bargain bucket, a composite trail shoe that you can now pick up for well under £100 or $100. So that's been our first run look at the knockdown price Adidas Terrex Agravic Flow 2. We hope you found it useful. Don't forget to hit like if you did, maybe share it if you know other runners who might find it informative and useful, and of course hit subscribe if you're not already. If you're looking for a good road to trail shoes, this video I'm going to put up on the channel right now is for you. Get stuck into that. Otherwise, as ever, thanks very much for stopping by and watching the videos. We hope to see you again very soon on the Run Testers, and in the meantime, happy running people.